They called him Krasnov. It was a code name assigned in secret. And it meant one thing. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a project. The KGB had a strategy: find ambitious Western businessmen, stroke their egos, and turn them into unwitting assets. In 1987, one such man arrived in Moscow. Wealthy, connected, hungry for power. He thought he was there for a business deal. The Soviets had other plans. Everything you're about to hear is true, sourced from available public documents, interviews, and the accounts of those who were there. How you interpret the information is up to you. Welcome to HEATHSTORY, where we bring you profound, historic, and timeless stories that delve into the resilience of the human spirit. Twice a week, each Sunday and Wednesday, we explore the untold chapters of history. If this story means something to you, please like it and subscribe to the channel. The KGB didn't just recruit spies. Their best assets weren't agents in trench coats meeting in dark alleys. They were powerful men who thought they were in control. The Soviets didn't need to force anyone into cooperation. They just needed to make them feel special, important. And in 1987, they found their perfect target. Donald Trump wasn't yet a politician. He wasn't even the global icon he would later become. But at 40 years old, he had built a name for himself in New York City, flamboyant, wealthy, and obsessed with recognition and power. What he didn't realize was that the Soviets had been watching him for over a decade. Trump's first wife, Ivana, was from Soviet-controlled Czechoslovakia. Her father was an informant for Czech intelligence, feeding information to the STB, the Soviet satellite agency that passed intelligence directly to Moscow. The Soviets had tabs on Donald Trump before he ever set foot in Russia. And they weren't the only ones interested. In 1984, David Bogatin, a close associate of Russian crime boss Semyon Mogilevich, walked into Trump Tower. He didn't just buy a unit. He bought 5 condos for $6 million in cash. Years later, the U.S. government seized those units, alleging they were used to launder money for the Russian mafia. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few decades, more than 1,300 Trump condominiums were bought by shell companies, many in cash transactions, raising concerns about Russian mob influence. But Moscow's interest in Donald Trump wasn't just about money. It was about something much bigger. In 1986, Soviet Ambassador Yuri Dubinin paid Trump a visit at Trump Tower. Fluent in English and a brilliant master of negotiations, the ambassador charmed Trump, telling him, "The first thing I saw in the city is your tower." He then suggested he build one just like it in Moscow. Dubinin's daughter later recalled that Trump melted at once. "He's an emotional person, someone impulsive," she said. "He needs recognition, and of course, when he gets it, he likes it. My father's visit worked on him like honey to a bee." One thing led to another, and now I'm talking about building a large luxury hotel across the street from the Kremlin in partnership with the Soviet government, Trump wrote in his book, The Art of the Deal. The Soviets set the trap. And on the 4th of July, 1987, Donald Trump took the bait. He stepped off the plane into the crisp Moscow air. His hosts were waiting, men in dark coats, smiling politely, shaking his hand with firm grips. The car was sleek, the service impeccable. Moscow had never welcomed a Western businessman quite like this before. Trump was important here. He could feel it. But what he didn't know was that the KGB already controlled every aspect of his trip. His driver, his translator, the staff at the hotel, every interaction, every word recorded. He wasn't there to make a deal. He was being studied. The KGB's tactics were subtle. They flattered him, told him he was special, a real leader. They wined and dined him at elite restaurants, showed him Russia's most exclusive properties, and introduced him to high-ranking officials who hinted at extraordinary business deals and opportunities. But the real test came in the hotel suite. The suite was luxurious, exactly what he expected. Marble floors, fine linens, the kind of grandeur reserved for the Soviet nomenklatura, many of whom would later become the nation's oligarchs. Moscow was rolling out the red carpet. But Trump wasn't alone. Somewhere in the walls, microphones were hidden. A camera, maybe two, disguised in the decor. A maid tidying up, moving just a little too carefully, eyes darting to the side before leaving. And then there were the visitors, the ones who arrived at his door uninvited. Beautiful, charming, laughing at his jokes, hanging on to his words. He had been courted before, but never quite like this. What he didn't know was that this moment, right here, might be the most important of his life. According to several former KGB officers, Trump may have been subjected to a honey trap. KGB-controlled prostitutes, or financial bribes, or secretly recorded conversations designed to gather compromising material. Donald Trump left Moscow believing he had made valuable connections. But to the KGB, the real deal wasn't about Trump Tower. It was about Trump himself. Because after that trip to Russia, something really strange happened. Weeks after his return, Trump took out full-page ads in major newspapers attacking America's foreign policy. His talking points? They sounded eerily similar to Soviet propaganda. He questioned NATO, accused allies of taking advantage of the United States, and signaled a shift in foreign policy thinking that aligned intentionally or not with Moscow's interests. "Tax wealthy nations, not America," Trump wrote. "Let's not let our great country be laughed at anymore." Several years later, as Donald Trump's financial empire crumbled under mounting debt, including up to $1.7 billion owed due to his failing casinos, new opportunities emerged. Once again, they tied him to Russian money. Bayrock, a real estate firm run by former Soviet officials, moved into Trump Tower's 24th floor. The firm was led by Tivikharev, a former Soviet bureaucrat with deep ties to ex-KGB officials and shadowy financial networks, and Felix Sater, a Russian-born businessman who had pleaded guilty to a $40 million stock fraud scheme involving the Russian mafia. Despite that criminal past, Sater had a direct line to Trump. He carried a Trump Organization business card. He worked on Trump-branded deals. He sat in Trump Tower negotiating multi-million-dollar projects. Bayrock structured deals that funneled foreign money into Trump's brand, allowing him to profit off projects without raising capital or investing his own money. But that wasn't all. Russian cash fueled Trump's financial comeback. It provided many of the buyers for Trump-branded real estate. The Trump Organization aggressively courted Russian investors, so much so that the area around Trump's Sunny Isles in Florida became known as Little Moscow. And it wasn't just Florida. The Trump Organization pursued multiple projects across former Soviet states seeking deeper financial ties in the region. And then, in what sounds like the plot of a Cold War thriller, a former KGB officer dropped a bombshell. Nearly 50 years after the KGB first started targeting Trump, and as he began his second term as president, a long-buried secret resurfaced. A former Soviet intelligence officer, Alner Musayev, made a stunning claim. During Trump's visit to Moscow, way back in 1987, he had been given a code name inside Soviet intelligence, a name that carried weight, a name that meant something, a name that had been hidden in Soviet archives for decades. That name? Krasnov. In Russian, it means red. Was this name a symbolic choice, a mark of influence, or simply a designation for someone the Soviets believed they could shape to their advantage? According to Musayev, a file that began in the Cold War is now in the hands of a former KGB agent turned president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. What's in that file? Soviet intelligence wasn't just about gathering information. They collected compromat, compromising material that could be used for blackmail or leverage. 3 former KGB officers, all speaking at different times in different places, agree. Trump was targeted in Moscow. And one thing is certain. Somewhere, perhaps deep inside a drawer in Vladimir Putin's desk, the name Krasnov still lingers. And the question remains, what if Trump were to attempt to repay years of loyalty, the single most important trait he has valued since his days of being tutored by the infamous Roy Kahn in Manhattan, perhaps without ever realizing he had been an asset. What would Russia stand to gain? And what price would the world pay for Krasnov? Only history will answer that question.
New Heath Story episodes drop twice a week only on the Jim Heath channel. If you'd like to help keep Heath Story going, consider becoming a member. Click below to join.